Thank you so much to Todd and to all of our panelists. We're going to take a quick photo, give a speaker gift, and then we're going to roll into our closing keynote address. And I'm pleased to welcome our keynote speaker who's going to close out the conference, Á'alíya Warbus, the MLA for Chilliwack, Cultus Lake, and the official opposition House Leader. Á'alíya joined us at IROC last year for a keynote address, and she shared an incredible story of community and strength. We're truly honored to have her back as our closing keynote speaker once again this year, so please join me in welcoming Á'alíya to the stage.
Easwell, Á'alíya til squi, Huelmuch til squi, Talitza casta Skelkale, Chilqueak, Taliqua, Humasquium, Samath, Scowlitz, Casta, Alis, Tel Cecila, Huliquatol, Tel Squi, Tomal, Shreishkowit, to Squi, Del Tal. If there are any elders in the room, I apologize for butchering that introduction. We had a wonderful elder open us up, and it actually made me really emotional, because you could tell by the way that she hit those accents and those glottal stops and the way the language hit the back of her throat that it was really authentic, that she actually spoke that language as a child. And it made me miss my grandma. My grandmother was our matriarch. She was the one that carried our culture. She was the one that fought for our language. She was the one that said yes to the last arranged marriage in our territory so that we wouldn't lose our cultural gifts. And she passed away this year. And it felt like a whole piece of our history and our legacy went with her. But when I heard that elder speak, I realized it's still here, just a different way. And I ran up to her and I hugged her and she said, "I'm with you." She gave me such a deep, caring hug. And what I'm going to talk about today is going to focus on some of those legacies and why they're really, really important. You know, we hear it sprinkled in through some of the conversations, and I really want to thank and uphold our chiefs and our leaders that are here, because I can tell that you're trying to let people know what our story is, what our perspectives are, why they matter, and it often feels rushed. I was joking with the organizers because we have some really excellent people that have come in to help make sure that we're running on time. Indigenous people tend to have long introductions. We talk about our families, we talk about our histories, we talk about our culture. And I think for a long time, we never had the chance to share who we are. We never had a chance to talk about our histories, and we never had a chance to be in front of important people. So oftentimes these conversations, they feel rushed. But for all of my Indigenous folk that actually come from the res, we have something called Indian time. It's considered derogatory now, but that's what we grew up knowing ourselves as, was Indians. And so I'm kind of used to everything running like 5 to 10 minutes late on the regular. And when we were running right on time for the first 2 days, I'm like, okay, this is Sarah's hand here, keeping us together, keeping us on time, which is a good thing. I've got a ferry to get to right after this, so I just want to preface that I have to run, but I've left some business cards with the organizers. My niece is graduating, and I couldn't be more proud to go and to support her. Her last name is Seymour. She comes from the island, from the Seymour family, so she's probably going to be like 3 hours into the ceremony anyways, but in case I don't want to be late. In order to bring my ancestors in and feel grounded, I would like to start with a song. Wanna sky, picked up and no ma. I say bisi sagi noa. Himiunagua que daskina hey ha yo hey oh hey 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 oh hey 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 wanna sky picked up and no ma. I say bisi sagi noa. Himiunagua que daskina hey yo. Right, I think we can get started. So what I want to talk to today is land, language, and legacy. I'm an elected MLA for Chilliwack Cultus Lake. I want to recognize some of the MLAs that are in the room that stayed to the very end, other leaders that are in the room, Anna Kindy, Ward Stamer, Bruce Banman representing Abbotsford, other parts of British Columbia. I think it's really important that we come in the room and we're really here to listen. I'm Hualmuch from Chilliwack, Chilhwayak, from the Scout-Kill First Nation. My grandparents are from Musqueam, Sumas, Scowlitz, and Chehalis. Stephen Point is my father. Gwen Point is my mother. And I have to say that winning the argument does not win the day. What is it that we're actually fighting for? And what do we want to see for our communities in the next 10 to 20 or 100 years? Partnerships start with true relationships, and true relationships do not operate in a bubble. They do not always follow a straight line, and there are real challenges. The important and critical opportunity before us is to grow from this and to continue to work together. Connection and community can foster inspiration. I've seen it many times here today and throughout the conference. Where are we coming from? Where do we agree? We have to understand that creating trust allows relationships to grow in many sectors and many communities, and we all have this responsibility. Nations that are working directly with industry is where opportunity has really taken root. But who knows the land and the communities and the needs better than the people who have lived and worked there for generations? What we've heard is that we must engage early and we must engage often, that the expertise and the knowledge of the land in Indigenous communities is deep, it's generational, and it's intimate, and I hope that I can display why. Challenges become unmanageable when there's a breakdown in partnership or communities. When there's a lack of understanding of Canada's history, and considering all of this must be done with sincerity and care. And I'd like to quote the chief who spoke when I was up at the BC Chamber of Commerce, Valerie Astoy, and what she said is that progress moves at the speed of trust. And I wrote it down because it's so true. We've had a lot of broken trust, a lot of broken promises, a lot of broken relationships in our country, and especially here in British Columbia. The land question is not an easy question, and we may not see it answered in our lifetime, but I hope that we can bring it further than we bring it backwards. So our culture and our languages and our traditional knowledges, I just want to be clear, are not at odds with development or progress. It's actually the key to our collective success, and if we embrace it, if we embrace one another, then our opportunities are endless. I didn't ask how the clicker works. I imagine it's the green button. Okay. So I want to talk a little bit about cultural identity and touch on this because this is so important to me. This is my daughter. Just before her puberty ceremony, where we brought out our traditional masks to mark her very first menstruation, we still do these things in our communities. They may not be public. You may not be invited. A lot of our ceremonies are still very, very sacred. But I was happy to invite some of the colleagues that I work with, and they actually came and they witnessed this really important marking in my daughter's life. Traditionally, what used to happen with young women in Stalo territory when they got their first menstruation is they'd actually dig a hole and they'd line it with cedar boughs. And she'd go and sit there for the duration of her very first time. They'd take branches from a pine tree, and the only thing that she was allowed to do was pick the needles off one at a time. And these traditions have been brought forward, but they've been severely interrupted. It was a way of marking and telling a young person, you're an adult now. You have to contribute to the community. You have to walk with respect. And now you are being watched by everybody in the community, the elders included, for how you carry yourself. And oftentimes that was when a young person would get their name. When I went through this, my mother carried out the ceremony for me. And I have to say, I felt like I was in jail a little bit. It was really, really hard. It was the first time I ever had to work all day from sunup to sunset. I had to be quiet. I wasn't allowed to talk to anybody. She covered me in about 10 to 15 blankets per night. Really, really hot, and I wasn't allowed to move. I had to wear a scarf that covered my eyes. I was painted, and I had to go to the river and bath in the morning. So when my daughter called me from school and I was sitting in the Legislative Assembly of BC and told me that she had gotten her first time, I wasn't sure what I was going to do. And I called my mom right away, and she said, I'm so sorry, I'm in Ottawa. She was at Assembly First Nations. She does some really, really excellent work. And we talked about it a little bit frantically, like, what are we going to do? Because neither of us are there, and I didn't know if I could get away from work. So before I packed up my stuff and abruptly left the buildings to fly home, I called my sister. And my sister had just put her kids through initiation in Snuneymuxw. And she said, well, the kids are gone, and I actually feel, I feel weird without them here. And I said, well, can you go get my daughter? And you have to start her on her 4 days. And so she dropped everything, and she went over and she got my daughter. And she carried my daughter through those 4-day ceremonies. I have to say, some of the stories that came out of it, though, were really funny, about the two of them trying to figure out how to do this together, and just how strict my sister can't be. But my daughter did it. She listened, she got up at dawn, she worked all day. Her aunties came, they talked to her. She went swimming at the river, and my sister made sure that she told everybody she broke ice to get in that water. Later, I found out it wasn't that much ice, but she still did it. And whenever we have a mask ceremony now, she's expected to show up. She's expected to go swimming in that river. She's expected to pray. When we're cooking, she has to help the women and the ladies. And when we're doing chores around the house, she has to get up and she has to help. And it's one of the things that I don't want to lose in our culture, because these identities have been passed on for generations and generations, and it's what kept us strong. It's why we survived colonization. It was by the very skin of our teeth, but it was because our elders wouldn't let us lay down and quit. So this is a really important part of my story, and I wanted to share this with you today. I'm going to get into some of the words that come from Halkamelum. This is the language that we speak, upriver Stalo. Huelmuch means a First Nations person. And I want you to pay attention to the end of the word, that much. That's very important. But as it was explained to me when I asked my grandma, are we Stalo? Am I from Skoukale? Are we part of Chilkowiak tribes? Are we part of Stalo Nation, Stalo Tribal? And she just laughed. My grandma used to just laugh when I'd say these things. It was like beyond her how I didn't understand who and what we were. And she said, no. Stalo means river. That's just what we called the river. Chilkowiak was a place that people gathered, and it turned into Chilliwack because they couldn't say Chilkowiak. Skoukale means a bend in the river. We were fishing there when the Indian agent came, and they drew a circle around the people that were there, and they said, okay, now this is your reserve, and he's your chief, Chief Billy Sapas. She said, that's not who you are. You're Huelmuch. It means you come from the land. And if you look at the word Tamuch, it has the same ending, and that's how we refer to the land. The word Mochwia, it was the only word that I knew growing up, and the swear words, those are the only ones my cousins would teach me. But Mochwia, I knew what that was, Mochia, and that means belly button. But you can see how the English words, they do not translate to what the true meaning of these words are. Because Mochwia has that same identical ending to it, that same root. Me and my sister have been talking about this. And that is that connection to your mother, that umbilical cord connection to your mother. It's a life connection. And what we do is we actually save it when it falls off, and we go and put it in a tree. We do similar things with the uterus after the child is born. But that is so that the baby doesn't continue going and looking for it. You have to go and bury it under a tree. And Á'alíya means to be alive. So there are those identities, those beings, and those life force words. They're all rooted in both. Huelmuch, that's who I am, I come from the land. Tamuch is the land. We will return to it. Mochwia is that life connection you have to your mother. And Á'alíya is to be alive. So when I tie these things together, if you look at this photograph, I just want to highlight as an explanation, this is my sister with our kids when they were much younger, dancing, sharing our culture. And this picture is some Stalo women at the river, 1990. They're out there in their dresses and they're setting their nets to fish, because fishing and the land has always been a way of our life and survival. We live off the river, we live near the river, we pray in the river, and the river is the absolute life force of our territory. So on my face, you can see Tameth. And this we take from the ground and we mix with marrow, and we put it on our face. It's because we're taking the ground and we're putting our ancestors on our face. That's how we pray. That's how we connect. That's how we bring the elements together. And we truly believe in these things, and they are real. And I know that that can be really hard for people to understand. But I think even some science and some of the mediums and some of the TV shows that you see today, they show you the evidence of this as well. That we are not alone here, and we have our ancestors with us all around us. Every single empty seat is said to be filled with our ancestors. So in our language, that ending, ath, it refers to the ones who've passed away. When you talk about an ancestor, sihuel, when you talk about an ancestor that's passed away, like we've lost a lot of young people, a lot of family members, but when they're gone, we consider them to be our ancestors. And you say, Siwel Ath. And there's that ending there, which connects the land to the ancestors, which is Tamath, which is what we put in our face when we're in ceremony. I talked a little bit about some of the ceremonies that you may not ever witness or be invited to. And I can't make apologies for that, because some of these things are so, so sacred that if you're not actually a part of it or you're not initiated into it, then it may be harmful for you to be there, because those strengths that we build, those songs that we sing, they were outlawed. They were viewed as wrong. We were called savages. Our way of life was completely stripped away from us. My grandmother, my grandfather, my other grandmother, my other grandfather, all went to residential school, and their stories are horrific. I don't even like repeating some of the things that they went through, because it's so traumatizing to think about the fact that was done to them when they were children, that they couldn't speak their language. And my mom's mom actually refused to ever speak it again. She was fluent in the language, and she refused to ever speak it again. And when my mom went back to return to our culture, and she told her mom told her, don't do that. You better not. You know how much trouble that's going to bring. And she wouldn't talk to my mom after that, because that's how damaged she was after being in residential school. But we do have sacred winter dances. It's called Smitla. My grandmother taught me that. The ending of the word smokehouse, it's actually not a house where you smoke fish. It's a place where we do our sacred winter dances, and it's called Smitla Out. And if you look at how we refer to longhouse, it's not just a house that you live in. The word for that is actually lalam, and that's just the house where you live. I'll call it a white man house, but no, it's no disrespect. It's called Huelmuch Out Teitha, because that's the house of the people. These words have really great significance. I'll go back one slide just very quickly to say this is a picture of a place that we swim. It's very sacred to us. A lot of our swimming holes, because we have so many people at really high rising rates joining our culture, a lot of young people are coming back to our culture. Sometimes you go and there's a literal lineup. It's like 5 a.m, trying to get there first, and there's a lineup. You got to go to the next one. There's people there. You got to go to the next one. There's campers there. You got to go. So we started going higher and higher and higher and higher up to the mountain. And now we're actively looking for new swimming holes that aren't being infiltrated with campers and recreational vehicles. The swimming in the morning is a really, really important part of what we do. And our culture goes all year round, as I'll show you on the next slide. The next slide I want to show you is an example of what we call Tamiyok. It means 7 generations ahead and 7 generations behind. That's how far you need to think about the actions that you take today. And I took this video because my kids all do canoe racing. I'm heading to a canoe race this weekend. They're under 16 years old. They love what they do. They're very competitive, and they did very well in this race. And it's an example of why we have to keep our foundations very strong and our cultures very strong within our families. But I was just so proud to see them get out there and to compete their heart out. And you'll hear my daughter screaming in the background. She's cheering if there's sound. That's my husband skipping in the back, my daughter sitting in front of him. And we do this every weekend. And this is how we keep our kids with us, focused, healthy, and safe. And these canoes used to be made out of one solid log, but it's hard to get that access. So we've developed the technology, and we make it into we make it by cedar strips now. They did very well in this race, and I'm excited to see how they do this weekend. So just to kind of conclude a little bit, this is the graduation ceremony in Chilliwack. We had 300 Indigenous kids go across that stage. It took about 4 hours, it was really long. But at the end, they put all the grads, the grade 12s on stage, and they honored them. And then they had a bunch of youth come and drum and sing, and that's all the parents in the crowd. They said they might need a bigger venue next year because we have so many young people that are graduating. The graduation rates when my dad went to school were probably 10 to 15 times lower. He told me he was the first person in his family to graduate from high school and go on to university. Now we have some of the highest educated per capita in our community, and we're making really, really excellent decisions and moves in Stalo Nation. So all of this is to conclude and talk a little bit about resilience. I'm sure that I'm pushing my own time to get to the ferry now, but I think this is really important. Today, many of our people thrive in business, education, politics, community development, and that is only because we've taken our culture and our language with us. This year, our caucus held the very first red dress ceremony and honoring inside the legislative building. We brought elders from Prince George, and they were so elated and so happy to be able to be in that building and to tell their story of resilience and how they fought to be recognized as some of the survivors and the people left behind, the missing and murdered women, and the Highway of Tears. And I'm really, really proud of this work. So I just want to say in closing to all of you, thank you for being here. Thank you for staying. Thank you for giving me your time. I hope I've earned it. Til Tsit Ham Til Siwel. I really thank you for my ancestors. I didn't have an overly partisan or prepared speech. I never do. I just think it's really important that I speak about who I am, and it's a bit of a part two if you were here last year. But I do want to leave you with these closing questions and comments. With regard to reconciliation, if not us, then who? If not now, then when? And if not for our future generations, all of us, then what is it that we're really doing? Thank you so much.